Ladies and gentlemen of the congregation, welcome back to another week of the Screen Sermon Podcast. I'm your host, B, and as promised, back once again with Cody. Welcome back, Cody.
Hey, great to be back.
And Josh, once again. That's 5 weeks in a row. That is definitely a record.
Don't say that. Now I gotta be on all these damn things.
Spoiler, we're gonna be doing the Coming Soon episode next week, so Josh will be on next week.
It's the summer of Josh.
Enjoy that. So we were talking about, so once again, we are in our very first version versus version episode. This is part 2 as we take a look at the 1958 version of The Fly, and then the David Cronenberg 1986 remake of the same name, starring Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, etc. The original gives us Vincent Price. So we talked about writing and the technical aspects. So once again, the technical aspects for us are basically all of that stuff: your cinematography, your sound design, your score or soundtrack, editing, things like that. And then writing is obvious, dialogue, setting, story. So we covered those two in the first part. If you haven't listened to that, please go back and do so. And so far, for all of us, we are at 2-0 for the 1986 version of The Fly. It took home the honors in both of those categories, but in very close races, which I think was surprising for potentially all of us. So now I wanted to dig into the performances, if that's okay with you guys. And so as we've been doing, we'll just do it chronologically. Can we start with the 1958 version? And Cody, what did you think about the performances? How did the actors do? Specifically, I guess, in these important roles of the scientist and his wife, the love interest.
Well, first note, biggest note on performances in the 58 version. There's a casting choice here that, as Little Richard used to say, makes my big toe shoot up in my boot, and that's the inclusion of Vincent Price. And he is at his Vincent Priceiest. And looking into it, too, I didn't realize this was actually a movie that helped push his name, into the forefront, I guess. Like, he wasn't as known as I thought. I hadn't actually tracked, as much as I love the guy, kind of the chronology of his career. But I thought that was kind of cool. And he always, I guess he spoke later, this was a movie he was still pretty proud of. And outside of Price, I thought the rest were solid, on point, a little bit of their time. I think I mentioned before, I think there were some tonal differences I definitely noticed more so in the performances almost than anything else, where we start with this tragedy, and then again we backtrack and then look into how it came to be. But then sometimes there were some in-between pieces where I felt it was just a little bit too casual. And like I said, I thought that the very end just felt a little bit off to me, like after going through now 2 tragedies as we understood them. But otherwise, nothing really in the negatives for me. I thought everybody was pretty on point. And I thought, I'm going to forget the actor's name now, but who played the Andre, our lead scientist that becomes the Flyman. I thought it was...
David Hedison is his name.
David Hedison, thank you. I thought it was a pretty brave thing, especially for the time, to spend a good chunk of his screen time in this movie, under a towel and then under what I think was like a 25-pound fly head. Yeah. that took some guts back in the days, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're in a post-Andy Serkis world now, you know what I mean? Where those kind of performances are a little bit more appreciated. But yeah,
can you confirm that he was under the fly head?
As I read, I'd have to go back and look at the article that I was looking at. But
I didn't look it up. I just assumed that it was like a stuntman because you couldn't see.
About having because it was 20 pounds. And I'll get into that a little bit more when we get to the effects. But yeah, he was complaining about it, and it was. I think it was rubber, so it's probably hot as shit under there too.
Oh yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah, he had a real John Rhys Davies and Lord of the Rings kind of experience with this movie.
Okay.
Not as long, but yeah. So I mean, if
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all. But I say overall, I thought the performances were solid. With again a few kind of tonal missteps maybe, but again that can maybe also be chalked up to a little bit of direction.
Yeah,
or also not wanting to completely bum out an audience.
What about you, Josh? Performances from your end?
It's one of the things that I remember most about this film when I think back on it, and something that I looked forward to when I rewatched it. Having David Hedison dialogue less throughout most of the movie after he becomes the Fly. I like that choice because it's the reason why, and this spoils a little bit into the next film, but it's why I lean towards this as far as acting goes, because he does all of his conveying what he's feeling through movements and, acting, but with no dialogue and with no facial features. So it's all movements. So when he gets angry and he starts pounding on that table, you can see his frustration that way. It's more of a visual thing than, hearing him go, this is pissing me off. It's, you get to see it, not get it told to you, which is one of those things you're taught in film class, show me, don't tell me. And it's being forced into it in this instance. Like I said, I like the caretaker. I think her name was Emma. I like her character being just having a character that's so straightforward. I think she played. There was a term for it, I can't remember. A regular person in a crazy world is a style of filmmaking, as opposed to a crazy person in a regular world. I think having her fulfill that role, she delivered well, because it made Helen, her all her movements and erratic behavior, it made them get put up on another level, almost a little bit higher than usual, because you get to see the contrast between her running around like a chicken with her head cut off trying to chase a fly, and the caretaker, that actress, her body language, she's just confused. Having Vincent Price is always a plus to almost any film. In fact, I can't think of a single film where I was like, man, I wish Vincent Price wasn't in this. The only negative I have, as far as performances go, and it's a negative as far as performances go in many, many, many films. The child actor that played Philippe there was yet a lot to be desired there. Especially back then, kid actors tended to not be great. Even now, they tend to not be great. Occasionally, you get a good character, like all the kids that in the new It movie. I think all of them were really good. But it takes a lot to get them, and when they're not the main character, they're more of a side character. Those performances tend to lack as a result. But otherwise, I liked every performance in the film.
Okay.
That's a good call on Philippe. I found the same thing. I mean, it's kind of astounding to see some of the kids from the movies back in those days compared to some of the ones now. If you look at the younger Culkin kids, Abigail Breslin, and child actors that weren't in the movie Signs,
Nice. What I would say is, I do think we're kind of in a place now where we have competent to excellent kid actors these days. Like, I can think Orson Scott Card wrote Ender's Game, decades ago, and when there was a conversation, I forget where this came from, there was a conversation about would Ender's Game ever be made into a feature-length film. I think Orson Scott Card, even at the time, had mentioned, I just don't think there are child actors that can handle the material. And so they ended up eventually making an Ender's Game film 15 years ago or something like that. I never saw it.
Right.
It basically disappeared. But I think if they had waited until more like this generation of kid actors who are now probably too old to have done it when they were younger, it would have been right. I think they were maybe 10 years off. I think they did it like 10 years too soon. But anyway, so as we mentioned before, acting was just different back then. Like, people were still performing in such a way where it almost seemed like they were in a play, like it was stage. This could also be the writing, I don't know, but I felt like it was more of a performance thing. Francois, Vincent Price, gets a call that his brother is dead. And he goes and sees the body at the factory, the mechanical press that has killed his brother. He barely reacts. Like, there's not much of a reaction there. If the angle was that, well, that makes him a suspect, then I could understand. But I don't even feel like that was ever really in question. And then later on, Philippe's, the little boy that plays Philippe, when they kind of break the news to him that, his father is gone and he's not coming back, it's not this breakdown of like, oh, my daddy's dead and all this other stuff. It's, oh, well, why did that happen? And it's almost like it's like the end of a Magic School Bus episode where it's just like, now let me explain death to you, and oh gee, thanks a lot, Grandpa, and for the explanation.
Anyways, back to my applesauce.
Exactly. Then we've got Patricia Owens as Helene. I think she puts on what I would consider the best performance in the film because she goes through all these peaks and valleys, right? She's got this very odd, like, disconnected, creepy thing going on where you're thinking, like, she murdered her husband, but she's, like, being really vague about it and not able to give you reasons. And, she's just kind of sitting on the couch like, oh, yes, I killed him. No, he stuck his head in there and I pressed the button and that's what happened. And she's acting very strange when the fly is in the room and all this other stuff. But then I feel like you lose it when you go into the flashback piece before any of this happens. And she's just kind of the bland 1950s mom / wife. And it's just a lot of that, like, oh, well, I'm just the woman who doesn't understand, so I guess I'll just leave. And, I'm going to put a sign outside of the door that says, don't bother me. And the wife comes up to it and is just like, oh, I guess I can't bother him. It's like, this is not a sign of today.
No.
That door would have been booted down. So, and like she does the damsel fall thing when she sees the fly, like, eat for the first time, I think. Or the head. It was the head. When she sees the head, she does the big, like, the back of her hand goes to her forehead and she falls over. Oh my. And just that kind of stuff. And then you get this lack of a reaction again near the end where the decision is being made, like, you're gonna have to kill me. I'm literally gonna walk with you over to the plant next door where, my brother and I own the business and whatever, and I'm going to lay in this press, and you're just going to press that button, and I'm going to get all this stuff across to you by gesturing and stuff. She's not crying. She's not begging for, I can't do it, nothing. She's just like, okay, yeah, get your ass in there, I'll press this button. There's just there's barely any reaction.
Just another Tuesday.
Yeah. But David Hedison is good. He's likable. He gives you the scientific explanation, but he does it like in a warm kind of way where it's like, no, this guy's a family man. He's just also, science is his work. When he realizes that the disintegrator reintegrator thing is producing stuff backwards, like, he has this reaction to it where, like, he recognizes that something is wrong with it, and just that he does definitely have this shift where he goes from being like the warm dad and husband to all of a sudden he turns into a nutty professor, right? He's like, let me take the family cat and throw it in the box. It's like, what the hell do you think's going to happen? And even that, when he tells Helene later on that, oh yeah, well, I did put the cat in the box and she disappeared.
Dude, I'm glad you mentioned the cats. I had this written down word for word in my notes. I said, after like another couple scenes, I said, this cat is turning into my Barb from Stranger Things. I'm like, where's the fucking cat?
And they never address it. Like, you get the ghostly cat meow thing, and then you never hear about it again.
He's meowing from the netherworld.
He's in the ether somewhere.
Yeah.
But, like, he just picks up the family cat, throws it in a box that you've now proven produces things backwards. And then when he tells his wife about it, she's just like, oh, well, why did you do that? And then he explains it. She's like, oh, okay. It just lets it go.
I thought it'd be a pip, you know?
So, yeah, the performances are very strange. Some of it is great. I do enjoy the physical acting that Hedison does when he's under like the shroud or under the fly head. I guess under the shroud, when he's like banging on the table and trying to indicate the things that he's trying to say, but without being able to say them. I did like that stuff too. Him fighting his fly hand, like sticking it in his pocket and stuff. Some of that got to be a little Three Stooges-y feeling for me after a while, because he was just being so overt about it. But a lot of the pieces of that physical performance I liked quite a bit. Him fucking his lab up was a lot of fun too, when he's just like picking up pieces of machinery and throwing it through the glass panes and stuff like that. I'm sure he enjoyed that to a certain degree.
Then he left for WCW.
And then, like I said, I just made this little comedic note that I brought up in last week's episode. There's a guy sitting behind Andre and Helene at the opera, and when they scoot in to sit next to each other, he gets really fucking annoyed that they just obstructed his view. And this extra in the background just puts on this great little performance for 3 seconds. It was really good. So yeah, that was kind of my take on the performances in the film. So Cody, did you want to talk about 86 and the performances that we get in 1986's film?
Yeah, absolutely. Something I didn't quite notice actually until kind of adding some things up in preparation for this episode. It's kind of a 3-person film. I mean, there's a handful of characters that we get to meet. Early transformation of Brundle when he goes to the bar and brings somebody back with him and everything. Mm-hmm. But by and large, we're with Goldblum, Davis, and I'm forgetting the name, Getz, who played the editor, you know? And in spite of what I said earlier about some of the way that Getz's character is written, and I think I was just a little bit incredulous that Gina Davis's character could still find something charming about this guy. I thought all 3 of them were pretty strong. I mean, Davis and Goldblum in particular. I mean, I'll just be honest. I don't think I've ever seen a bad Gina Davis performance.
Yeah,
I'm serious.
I would agree with that.
Like everything I've ever seen her in, even like some C- movies. I mean, she's always great.
Yeah.
That being said, Goldblum's another guy in a different way, is similar to Vincent Price for me, where usually if he's on screen, I'm pretty happy. It was cool to see him back in these days too, pre-Jurassic Park and before he became kind of a meme, the same way Christopher Walken did, you know?
Yeah.
Actually, there was a funny little Goldblumism when he does the voice recognition into the computer. He doesn't just say the name, it's Seth Brundle. And it repeats it back to him and he goes, Seth Brundle. And that really got me. But yeah, I know I mentioned this before, but I thought that Goldblum's kind of spacey way of speaking and his kind of never-ending curiosity, you know, that kind of thing that he usually has in his performance, and what made him such a good choice for Ian Malcolm, I thought too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, gave it a really nice kind of tonal mix as he was going down this dark rabbit hole, you know, of his body falling apart. And again, Gina Davis as being a point of strength, but also getting to see her when she's away from Brundle, and quite a few times when she's with him too, doing her best not to fall apart. But I mean, who could blame anybody for falling apart in that case?
Definitely.
So, and takes hell of a duo to hold down that much screen time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Between those 2 principal performers. So I gave them both A+ for this movie. Honestly, I thought they were both dynamite.
Josh, performances from 86?
Like how you had Price at his priciest, you had Goldblum at his bloomiest. Pre-Jurassic Park.
Not as Goldblumiest?
Not just as bloomiest. He hasn't been gold until Jurassic Park.
His most blooming?
Like an onion. Gina Davis pre-Beetlejuice. I think all the characters and the performances were really strong in this. I think Goldblum was the perfect casting, even though he may not have been the first choice. He's really good at playing, an eccentric weirdo, someone who's a little nuts. Yeah. He's sort of like in the same camp as like Nicolas Cage in his performances and what you would expect from him, and he delivers on that front, making it. It starts off sort of normal, what you'd expect, but he does end up getting more and more. Because he stops talking, which is something he's known for, his dialogue, his delivery, which is an interesting choice to have a character known for that, and then just take away something, that he's really good at delivering. So it gets a little bit more somber, something you wouldn't expect from Goldblum, which, now that I'm saying it, probably should have gone in technical as or writing, but whatever.
Right.
When I was looking it up,
it's not a perfect system, is it?
Well,
but a lot of this shit can fit into so many different things.
So it's hard to pick what fits best. But when I was looking at the IMDb, I saw that the baboon in the film was played by a Typhoon, and who was the star of Shakma, which I still haven't seen. The animal,
really,
the animal star, I should say. It's the killer baboon.
He didn't have dialogue, you mean?
He was on the poster. He's the star. When you go to the killer baboon movie, you don't go to see people talking. So yeah, he's the fucking star.
I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned the baboon, and I had him in my notes too. I said under performances. I said baboon does well for what he's given.
He's trying his best.
Yeah.
Like I already spoiled in the 58, but I do prefer the performances in the 50s Fly more than this, because it brings something to the table that this did a little bit, like I mentioned with, him not having dialogue. They both do that, but I like the movement-based shit more, where I feel like this one leans more in the realm of effects over performance, because that's what this one's really known for. It's not known for its performances as much as, look at this thing. But everyone in the film was good, and Gina Davis was arguably she was a better romantic interest than Helen.
Yeah, Patricia Owen's character. Okay. I think this is the part that I have potentially the most to say. I don't know. In the 1986 Fly, Goldblum is the man, and I am an unapologetic, Goldblum guy. His mannerisms, which I think just come naturally to him, I'm not sure, or if he cultivated this over time. They are so great for playing eccentric geniuses. That's why he does it all the time, right? I mean, Independence Day, Jurassic Park, this film, he is consistently playing these eccentric genius-type characters. Shit, his one episode appearance in Friends, he is an eccentric genius. Like, he's a director, and, he's trying to help Joey with his performance, and he's talking about, you're here, you're too horizontal, I want you to be vertical, and, like, all this, it's perfect for him, and he does it so well.
That was a great Goldblum pause on that read, by the way.
Thank you. Brundle is so likable, and a lot of that just comes through because of Goldblum's charm. He's a very charming guy. The character is written in a charming way, and it's Keaton. Keaton or Gibson, I don't think would have had that as easily. I think Keaton could have gotten there, but I think this was Sorry, I'm kind of saying that, not realizing that was from part one. We talked about how Michael Keaton and Mel Gibson were both offered this role and declined it. So it just would have been a different film. I think Keaton could have gotten there, but there's something about Jeff Goldblum, at least for me as an audience member, where I'm like, I just like Jeff Goldblum. And so when he plays characters, I want to root for them. I want to believe in them. I want to see them progress and see what happens to them. When he gets to that part in the film where he's breaking up with Ronnie because she's basically not willing to go through the telepods and become the best version of herself, which is what he thinks is happened to him. He gets into this mode where he's so manic, and he gets into these complicated philosophical line deliveries and things like that, where what was it? It was something along the lines of like if you're not going to drink deep, or something like that. He starts waxing poetic as he's storming out of the apartment. I can't exactly remember what he said. And he feels like he's playing an entirely different character from Seth Brundle at that point. And I just think that shows Goldblum's ability to have that range to play different characters. He retains his charm toward the end of the film when he's literally becoming a monster. He goes back to being the charming Seth Brundle. And the insect politics scene, which I also brought up in part 1 of the podcast, he is so great. And a lot of that was the writing. Like, they clearly wrote that for him. This had to have come from the screenwriting. But he took that and made it his own with the way he delivered it. And love that scene. One of my favorite sections of dialogue in any movie. And as far as like from the scientist perspective, he is a more interesting character to me than Andre Delambra. He's more varied. He has more energy in the performance. It doesn't feel like this, like a performance of a performance, like somebody who knows that they're acting. It's like, oh, well, that looks like this. And, so this is how I deliver my lines. And instead it's just like, no, I become this person. Like, and now Seth Brundle is Jeff Goldblum. So he's going to take on some of my mannerisms, but I'm going to deliver the lines that were written for him. Gina Davis, like Josh said, is just a better female lead than, Helene. Or Veronica, I guess, is better than Helene, in my opinion. She was new to acting at this point. I don't think she had many roles prior to The Fly, and that's why Cronenberg liked her. He wanted somebody that was kind of unknown. Actually, no, I'm sorry. He didn't want her because Davis and Jeff Goldblum were a couple at the time, and he was unsure about dealing with a real-life couple and having to direct them and stuff like that. But I think that was, to Cody's point, why they were able to do so much and have so much screen time together. Exactly. they were together all the time as it was. So I think they were just kind of already in that place as far as chemistry is concerned. And I think that definitely comes through on screen. In the beginning of the film, I noticed she doesn't open her mouth a lot when she's delivering lines. It's almost like she's delivering them through clenched teeth, like she's nervous. But I kind of came to just kind of accept that I think that's kind of how Gina Davis performs sometimes. She's like talking out of the side of her mouth kind of thing. So she's not being as animated with her face and stuff until it gets to the point where like she's screaming and she's upset about things.
Same thing in Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think that's just her. And I was trying to think about like The Long Kiss Goodnight, but she plays such a different character in that movie that it was kind of a hard comparison to make. I mean, she literally plays like highly trained government assassin. So
yeah,
like,
well,
you could night and day.
Her character in Beetlejuice first encounters Michael Keaton's Beetlejuice. She's her mannerisms and everything about whether or not to summon him. She does the same thing there, and the wedding scene.
That's true.
Too.
She's very good at being vulnerable. she's clearly like she's great at like the mortification of just like, you know, like the birthing the aborting the maggot baby scene, like the horror that goes along with that, and just the tragedy of just like she loved this guy, like she was clearly into him, and watching him deteriorate is clearly affecting her, and then at the end, you know, being forced to be the one that puts him out of his misery and stuff, and like how impactful that was. She just did great. And then I mentioned this during the writing section, but Joe Getz I thought was awesome as Stathis, I forget how to pronounce it. And I really had a change of heart about his character, because I remembered from my original viewing of the film of him just being a straight up heel, and I didn't feel that way this time. I just felt like, you know, we've all had moments of jealousy in our lives where, you know, somebody has picked somebody else over us or things like that, and how pissed off we are. Maybe we did something a little outside of our character in response to it. And I really feel like that was some of the like negative stuff that we got from Stathis's character. But then he also is trying to do what's right, or do what he can to be supportive, or do what he can to be decent, because he didn't want to lose her. And like he literally says, I just want you to be in my life. Like when he's regarding it at first about her showing an interest in Brundle, he just kind of like comes at it from a point of, you know, yeah, go get it out of your system, you know, because we both know that you and I are going to end up back together. And like he's got that kind of arrogance about it. He's kind of a douche, but he's not completely a douche. He's a jealous ex. He follows her around and stuff like that. And Joe Getz's performance during, I feel like he plays both sides very well. He plays this asshole ex-boyfriend, but then he also plays the like, I'm gonna save her from this monster, you know, and do the chivalrous thing, and you know, try to protect her from this whole thing. I feel like if he was a full, you know, dyed-in-the-wool heel, he would have just left her to be savaged by this fly creature, and that's not what he does. He takes her, you know, he's the one that takes her to go see the doctor because she wants this baby out of her body and all this other stuff. It of course gets subverted because Brundlefly jumps through the damn window and takes her, but like he tries to, you know, help her get the help that she needs and things like that, which I don't think would have happened if he was a, you know, a full cloth asshole. So yeah, performances were great all around. I was a big fan. Like Cody said, this was kind of a trio of, you know, characters. There wasn't a whole lot else in terms of extra people. So, Cody, which film gets the nod for you? I feel like Josh already tipped his hat toward the 58 one. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah,
Josh?
that's what I'd pick. Just because, you know, that's something that's always stuck with me about it.
I'm glad to hear.
What about you, Code?
I'll say I'm glad to hear Josh's answer. I was really hoping that the 58 one would get 1 point in this entire thing, because that being said, I'm going with the 86 one again.
Mm.
And again, it to me, it just came down to those two main players. I mean, I thought their performances were just more layered than anything in the 58 one. In spite of having my boy Vincent Price, yeah, I got to go with 86.
And I agree in that 86 Fly goes up 3-0 for me as well. And I think it was just because I literally put them up against the character that would be, I guess, their avatar from the previous one. Brundle versus Andre. You know, which did I think Goldblum or what's his name? Now I've forgotten. David Hedison, who had a better performance as the scientist. Like all of those line deliveries and the you know, the mannerisms and the quirks and things like that, I think that Goldblum knocked it out of the park. Andre also had some very cool sections of that film, specifically when he's trying to hide the transformation from Helene, but it didn't reach those same heights. And the same thing, I thought Helene, when she was the kind of catatonic woman who probably murdered her husband and we were trying to get to the bottom of it, it was an interesting performance. And then we went into flashback mode and she just became like Beaver Cleaver's mom, and I was out at that point. Like she lost it for me there. And there really wasn't an equivalent of a Joe Getz, right? Because in the same vein that we didn't have an Inspector Karras in the 86 version of the film, we didn't have a Stathis in the 58, so that one was kind of hard. But as I keep talking about, I ended up really liking Joe Getz's performance. I didn't like that character specifically. I was more impressed by how it was written and Joe Getz's ability to perform it. So yeah, the 86 Fly gets the performance point for me as well. Goes up 3-0. And unless there's some crazy intangibles, which we'll get to after the effects piece, it clearly has the numbers to get my final recommendation. But we'll get there. Are we okay with getting to effects and kind of getting into the wrapping it up conversation?
Will 58 pull it out with the effects category?
The one that the 86 version won an Oscar for?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about the effects from 1958 first. Cody, go for it.
Well, I mean, for what's left, I mean, there are things that I feel like could fall under effects. To Josh's point earlier, there's a lot of overlap in some of these categories that could possibly fall under the technical side. But since we already kind of talked about the set design and some of those things, I guess I'll just stick to basically the makeup effects. I don't even know if you'd really call it makeup, but you know what I'm talking about. I mean, honestly, the fly head, for as kind of old-timey and almost hokey as it might be, I thought it actually was like pretty effective. I thought it looked well within the rest of the film. I had seen that scene before, because it shows up on all kinds of like greatest whatever list, greatest sci-fi horror little moment lists. But seeing that that first reveal of the head, and then her screaming, and then getting the image from within the fly vision of her screaming in context was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Outside of that, and we kind of already went over this a little bit, but the man fly in the web, I thought was. You could kind of see the strings there. I mean, again, I don't know exactly how you would perform that kind of effect back in those days, but you could tell that they had to kind of layer in this human from some other shot. But as I mentioned before as well, I also thought that was pretty effective, though. I mean, it's always going to look a little bit surreal when you see like a 2-centimeter man in a spider web, regardless. So
the unfortunate misnomer of somebody out there, the 2-centimeter man.
But yeah, those were the two standout kind of effects for me of that first one. And like I said, I thought they were both quite good, not just for their time. I thought they fit well within the overall film.
There is an uneven amount of stuff to say as far as effects go between these two films. This one has a few things to talk about. The other one has, you could write an essay just on that. But the flyhead design it's not as going into it. When you think of the fly, you think of, just fly mask on it, and it is that. But there's it's not as Spirit Halloween as you'd expect. It's actually decently well done.
Yeah.
I've always been confused of the claw growing up, and because flies don't even have that damn thing. But I could look past it as, this is a result of the mutation, even though it doesn't particularly make sense when you think about how the what did Cody call it? The man fly or the fly man?
So the fly man would be Andre with a fly's head.
In the web. Had just a straight up human arm. You'd expect the Andre to have a straight up fly arm, but he's got like a fucking lobster claw for some reason. But again, I'll let that slide as the mutation did some fucky shit. Because I don't know what a fly arm looks like up close. Maybe it does look like that. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. But when I think of it just like, a fucking bendy straw shape.
But how poor would it look if they just attached a big flexi hose to the end of his hand?
That's why I'm willing to let it slide. Because if they did that, then it's not as iconic as Mr. Fly Lobster. If you had Mr. Bendy Straw arm, looking with an arm like Nunu's nose from Teletubbies, just flopping. I believe the scene at the end with the web and all, I think that was all puppets. But otherwise the makeup was done by Ben Nye. He's a very well-renowned makeup artist. He's worked on, I think, over 500 films, was what he was noted as, because he was real big. And in doing makeup and growing up, what they had us using was his line of cosmetics and everything. Like, especially when you first start, all the stuff you have is Ben Nye brand. I think I said Bill Nye, which is the science guy, and I didn't mean to.
You said Ben.
Yeah.
You said Ben.
You're
I thought it was Bill Nye, the actor.
Yeah.
Bill Nye brand.
Bendy
Straw arm. But
makeup rules.
He did the work on that. And what you did see, it's limited because it's the 50s, and while it didn't have, I wouldn't call it low budget necessarily. It wasn't anything near modern standards of what they'd be given. And that other scene with his head crushed in a hydraulic press, I think, and this could go in either this or writing, or probably a third category, but I think that's such a more interesting way to do the suicide than just a gun blast to the head. Even though you get that the post gunshot scene, which is really neat in the 86 version. There's something real visceral about having someone hold their head there while a hydraulic press slowly comes down and crushes your head into Play-Doh.
Yeah.
And I do like the fact that while the makeup was good on the Flyhead, it wasn't showed throughout the whole film, because if it was, it would stay out its welcome really quick. So you had this sort of
very quickly.
I'm ashamed, I don't want to be seen like this, with a towel draped over his head. And I think that played to the strengths of the makeup while not letting it get too many shots where you can see all the faults in its design. Because when you do,
I think when you do,
you're advised against this, but there's certain times that you're not able to, sometimes you have to work around it. When you design a creature or something, certain shots look much better than other ones, so you tend to have the person doing the camera work make sure to get those shots and not catch it in certain positions. The same way in animation, you always have someone sort of tilted and not looking straight on because it looks weird. It does the same thing in makeup. Yeah. So I feel like they played it through so that all the shots that they got on the Flyhead were just like the perfect shots, and any flaws they had, any seams that might be there, anything that would give away that this is a person wearing something on their head, they didn't show that, and they worked around it camera-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I had the gore, like the very unexpected gore in the beginning, and the half-squished body and the breasts. Like, it's delightfully gross. I really enjoyed it, and I think because I wasn't expecting it from a film from 1958, it was a lot of that. Love the colors in the film. Cody, you kind of touched on this before, and it's probably more of a technical thing than an effects thing. But they really they pop. And when you get those kind of flashy, they're almost like sections of neon signs. They look like tubes just filled with neon of purples and greens when we're in the lab, when the disintegrator reintegrator thing is being fired up, and then all the coloring that happens outside, and how they do all that stuff where they're in the garden.
Look at all the science going through those tubes.
Well, that's science water.
Yeah.
That's where Bill Nye comes in.
Neon is actually a powder inside these glass tubes that gets excited by a... Yeah. So the fly head, as we discussed, was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to look like Baxter Stockman, but a really shitty, Spirit Halloween is actually probably the best way to put it. Like somebody said, I forget who. I thought it was going to be like way oversized and look like it's made of foam rubber and like very obvious, It wasn't that at all. I thought actually the choice to keep the fly head the same general dimensions as a human head was a good idea. It also, like, the way that its mandible pieces kind of like jerk and vibrate when Hedison is moving around. I'm sure that wasn't like anything mechanical. I'm sure it was just made to kind of bob with the movement of the head. But I'm sure that was... Okay, so you really didn't have much of a... I guess you could have made it out of something more rigid, but I'm sure it was intentionally done because it kind of resembles a fly's like mandibles and how fast they move. There's a lot of... Like, flies are never still. So, like, I feel like whenever you get a close-up image of a fly on, like, a nature show or something like that, like, their little gross mouths are constantly moving around, and I feel like that was done decently by this rubber mask.
Interrupt too much, but
please
when you make a mask out of rubber, it has a lot more buoyancy to it and its movements, whereas latex still has give to it, but it's designed more so to stick there. But like if you applied pressure to a fully formed piece of latex, it would like sink inwards and then stay. So it's usually either designed around the actor's face, or they'll have other stuff inside the mask to keep it still. If you like push in a piece of rubber, it tends to bounce back a lot more because of the material.
Well, would you agree though that was probably done intentionally because they wanted that kind of mandible movement? Or do you think that was just a happy accident?
I don't exactly know what the techniques were in the 50s all too much. I know that rubber was used a lot.
You don't know
rubber
that stuff? Come on, man.
A lot more than it is now. But probably because it's more of a pain in the ass to work with. But if you're playing to the strengths of your materials, which you should always do, such as like if you're trying to do something that looks more organic, or see more humanity underneath, you might want to go silicone because it's more transparent. They probably tested a few different things and then played the strengths with it, because they could have used mechanical aspects, but that would have cost a lot more money than just having it flow naturally, especially since you don't see it much. There wouldn't be much of a point to like put all that stuff in, especially in a 20-pound head, because all the mechanisms make it weigh a lot more.
Yeah. I was just about to interrupt you and make that exact same point of, it was already a 20-pound rubber mask. I'm sure adding mechanical stuff would have just made it so heavy. Yeah. And then the last piece that I have about effects from 58 is the man-fly in the spiderweb. So I mentioned this in part 1, but when we see it zoomed out when when Inspector Karras is sitting on the park bench, or it might have been Francois, either way, somebody's sitting on the park bench, you see a really, really bad looking spiderweb next to him with a really, really fake looking spider in it. And obviously you're supposed to get the visual there that like, oh, there's a fly in that spiderweb. Oh my god, that's the fly. And then later on when we get the close-up of that imagery, and again, I don't know exactly how they got that shot. I think, as we've discussed, it must have been some kind of patch, right? That's what we've kind of decided. It is horrific. And I don't know if that was a real spider. I don't know if they made some kind of spider thing and like pushed it into the camera or whatever. That whole it looks like something from a David Lynch film. It is off-putting. There's something about it that is like unnatural and just kind of gross. It kind of turned my stomach a little bit. I was impressed that it was able to give me that kind of a visceral reaction. So big ups to them on making something that probably could have been really hokey and silly looking. It was actually really unnerving. So let's get into the one that the essays have been written about, as we said, and kind of wrap this thing up with the Fly 86's effects. Cody, what do you got for me?
Nothing to say. Josh? No. No, I mean, I completely see why this movie is written about the way it is, and again, why Chris Walas won his award. I'll just jump towards the end. I thought that the final transformation, I wrote this on my notes, but I thought it was on par with some of Rob Bottin's work in The Thing. Like, just incredible, you know? But also, to me, in some ways, evoked some things from, like, older horror movies, you know what I mean? I thought it was a nice kind of mix, but
Are you talking about when Brundlefly fuses with the telepod, or are you talking about the final form of Brundlefly before that happens?
Final form.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Although,
sorry, go ahead.
The synthesis with the pod was also pretty excellent. Yeah, but I mean, no, that like the early stuff with the ear and the teeth and the nails, that was just like really hard to look at. And like that kind of like, I don't want to look, but I kind of do want to look kind of way. You know what I mean? And the same thing with the hairs, the little hairs. It's a really nice touch to just start it that small. You know?
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that can watch those things, you know, like videos of people like that have different skin like things. You know what I mean? Like close up shots of that and what they have to do to get rid of it. That's one of my weird things, you know? So all the like the little hairs and then the way the skin changed just like gradually over time. Really nice choices there, and again, just the texture on all of it, like, felt like disturbingly real. My only small kind of, I wouldn't even call this a beef, not even quite a negative. I thought his mid form, the bubbly golem that I mentioned earlier, I thought I lost a little bit of overall character of the character. You know what I mean? Shape wise, it just like felt like, the texture again, like, and the painting on it. Everything was great. I thought Goldblum did a pretty amazing job of finding a performance underneath all of that. But just the overall design, I don't know, to me it just felt a little bit too Play-Doh-y, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I totally see why it won the Academy Award and why people probably like Josh have written full college papers on this. So I'll just throw to him, the guy that actually knows how all this works.
Yeah. Go for it, Josh. We got an hour.
I have yet to go through this with a fine-tooth comb like I want to, because there's so much content to get through in it. But there's a whole team of effects artists worked on this, not just Christopher Walas. Though he is the one that's leading the charge there. He did a lot of stuff with Cronenberg, like Scanners. He also did the Gremlins, and Brandon. He did House 2. Bringing it back to House for another week. You will watch those movies.
Watch the movies, Brandon. I haven't seen them either, but watch them.
You can't escape the house.
We'll have to do it for the pod.
Anyway, the way that they did this...
You do this every time. You're on the show like 3 weeks in a row, and inevitably on the third episode that you're on, you bring up House. And then I'll do like 2 in a row without you. And then we'll start a new series of 3. And then on the third one, you bring up the House movies again.
I want you to watch House, man. The way that they did this...
We'll do it as an arc. We'll definitely do it as an arc in season 2.
A super interesting... because they planned this out, right? So the best way I could describe it, just off the top of my head, because I'm getting flustered with all this shit going on. Because there's a lot in this film that trying to condense it is sort of difficult. But how Brundle... He's first of all, he's referred to as Brundlefly, like officially, whereas in the 58 version, it's just called The Fly, which is really neat because... it sort of separates them into this is half fly, half man, and like this is a man that is now a fly, which is super interesting. Right. And that's not even the film; that's just the people who made the films making that distinction themselves. But anyway, so how they design him is they started with how he looks at the end of the film, that design of him being the fly, and they worked backwards. And they set it to where it would be 7 stages of transformation. Sort of like if you were making... if you were making a werewolf film. But they worked backwards to try to be like, okay, this is what we want. And they wanted something that was as far from being humanoid as possible. So this gradual transformation would end up being something hard. And they knew with the the stopping point would be. And they did it in the best way possible, because the easiest way to make something look monstrous is to not use a person. The sixth and seventh stages, the final stages of the transformation, were all puppets. Using, one of them was, I don't remember what the final one was used, but I remember the one before, the stage 6 one was used just, rods and cables. It's an easy way to make something look non-human, because when you do makeup and you try to make, let's say you're trying to design an alien, but you want an actor to do it, you don't want CGI or anything. If you use a person, you have to either use super unique camera shots or just accept that you have a humanoid base, because making like a person, you're like, I want to make this person a butterfly. If you want to do that all practically, you have that person base that's really hard to hide. If you use something like puppets or stop motion, preferably not CGI, but that can be done well, it's a lot more non-human, a lot more, this is a creature that I'm looking at. It's as far away from a person as possible. So having them start with puppets and use that medium, and then work their way down into Jeff Goldblum, like Pokemon evolving in reverse, I think is the best way to do it. Because 7 was and 6 are sort of similar. 7 would be the one right before he shoots himself or gets shot. Before,
where he's got all the metal stuff incorporated.
Before that, he was just kind of the one that was walking around using puppets and rods and all that.
And that one looks like a wire puppet. And
then
like with the way it moves and stuff.
Before that, they used a full body suit. So because they work backwards. So stage 5 would be, they made all this shit and piled on a Jeff Goldblum. And I believe they made it into a way that like he had trouble seeing, because the eyes like didn't line up. Because that's one of those things when you're doing creature design that's a pain in the ass, because your actor needs to see, which sucks. You always need eye slits and you have to hide them.
Such prima donnas.
Yeah, the actors don't need to see. It's 2023. You really gonna?
I need vision.
The sight will come through in
you
your
really
performance.
need to rely on your eyeballs? Grow the fuck up.
Yeah, right?
What if I walk into something?
I thought you were independent. What do you need to rely on your eyes for? Stage 4, I think that's one that got cut, but it was supposed to be latex suits with foam latex, which is a bit different than regular latex, the way it catches light and everything. It was used on the monkey cat scene, which is, I believe, still in the one of the cuts on the DVD.
Oh, yeah.
And there's also, like, they delve into the behind the scenes a lot more in the physical releases, and I still have yet to get my hands on those.
Okay.
And then before those, it's kind of more prosthetic work and then makeup and shading and showing veins on his faces, because it has him, like, his face is all jacked up. He's still Jeff Goldblum, like he's got a lumpy ass head.
I thought you were going to stop at ass.
He's got a lumpy ass.
He's just Jeff Goldblum with a lumpy
he combined
ass.
with the baboon, so he's got these big, bright red ass cheeks. That's my remake of The Fly.
The Boon.
Careful. That sounds like it's like very close to, like that could be a slur somewhere.
That's what the B stands for in B. I'm your host, Boon. Oh, man. Amazing.
This is Boon. Welcome to the Screen Sermon Podcast. I'm here with Cooter.
I forgot what I was saying. I like the idea that Brian, that B is half baboon, and the viewers can't see it, but every 15 minutes he flashes his ass to the camera.
However many episodes in, we remember it's a mandrill and not a baboon.
The last thing you were talking about was Jeff Goldblum and his lumpy ass head, and that's when I derailed you. Oh man.
Yeah, before that, they did some neat things, combining different ways of doing shit. They sculpted teeth that they didn't have him fall out of his mouth. They had that vomit that I'd love to know. I haven't seen how that was made yet, but I'd love to know.
I heard it was milk, eggs, and honey.
A lot of food is used on film sets, and let me tell you something. It smells like shit. I had to, for something I was working on, when we were making blood, there was a bunch of different stuff that went into it for the consistency that we were going for. And they had us use, basically, you take little slices of organ meat, and you put them in a fucking blender with chocolate syrup. And it looks cool, but the room smells like shit.
I'd have thought raw flesh and chocolate would have mixed better.
Yeah, you can lick it off the wall after you're done, while Brandon flashes his ass in the camera.
What is this, an Andy Warhol film?
Very avant-garde. It's my student film.
I was gonna say, people licking shit off walls. Other guy's got his pants down.
Eyes wide shut, too.
I lost my train of thought
Again.
I have this mental image stuck in my head of you just like, I'm trying to talk and you look in the camera, you scowl, you just turn around and moon the camera, and you've got an ass that's like twice the size of your regular ass, and it's bright red. It's like the devil off a cow and chicken.
That's how he establishes his dominance as the host.
Oh, this episode's gonna be fun when it gets uploaded. Anyway, the gist of all that was, I really
liked it.
I think it's neat and very effective the way they took a final design and they worked their way from there to get from point A of the fucked up monstrosity pile of meat with eyes to Jeff Goldblum, who, is also a piece of meat with eyes.
Let's just degrade him at the last moment of the show. Fucking pile of meat.
Don't objectify Jeff Goldblum. Oh man.
Also, I looked it up. According to Duke University, only females have the red ass, and it's only while they're ovulating.
Right, are you ovulating?
That's personal. The Boon doesn't like personal questions.
I'm never gonna look
Third
at
person
named Boon ever again the same way. All right, Boon, your turn.
Speaking of the Boon, I forgot to talk about him earlier, but Typhoon evidently was an absolute terror on set because you can't actually train or domesticate baboons. Turns out incredibly strong.
Yeah. Turns out wild primates can be a handful.
Who knew?
Yeah.
And evidently the only thing that kind of kept him centered was Jeff Goldblum is a 6'4", well-built man, and so they kind of had a bond. And I feel like they showed that on screen whenever Whenever Typhoon would come out of the telepod and jump into Jeff Goldblum's arms and he would like pet him and stuff, I'm pretty sure he was the only person on set that could do that.
He recognized him. He said, "That guy's ass is lumpier than mine." He must be the leader.
And he's ovulating.
Can you imagine what an old world primate would think seeing the final creature that is the fly in this movie for the first time? It's like what I imagine a dog if he saw what a giraffe looked like. It'd be terrified.
I don't want to repeat a bunch of stuff that you already said. I just wanted to point out, like, when he started to change and become like the pure version of himself, when he breaks a dude's arm in the bar, that makeup was disgusting.
Oh yeah,
the compound fracture, the arm coming through, horrible. The aborted maggot in the dream sequence.
Oh yeah,
it definitely had like pneumatics in it or something that was making it wriggle and stuff. Just horrible, very gross. Awesome, but disgusting. The melting of Stathis's hand when he vomits on his hand, and then again when he vomits on his ankle to be able to rip his foot off. Absolutely disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Just horrendous. And things like that always, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, they really strike me. Because, like, as soon as this crap touches your leg, right, and he's in shock because it just happened to him already and with his hand, and now this thing is vomiting on your ankle, and you're just watching it happen. As soon as this material touches your foot, like, my foot's going to be gone. I'm not going to have a foot anymore. And just the finality of that, it just bothers me. Like, and there's nothing you can do about it. When the Brundlefly, like, essentially rips out of Brundle's body, and you finally get like all the fly parts bursting through Brundle's flesh and stuff. Just that's like the ultimate Cronenberg scene right there. Just like this man's skin is sloughing off of him, and he's becoming the creature that's underneath. Just super gross. Also amazing and incredible, and the effects team did such an amazing job putting all of this stuff on film in front of us. And I really dug the Brundlefly fused with metal parts from the telepod. Looked like a monster you would fight in Doom.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was really cool looking. I mean, it's all there, man. In all of our nonsense and all of our fun that we were having. I mean, the effects in this are awesome. This movie is gross, which you would expect from Cronenberg and his style. And the team that put it all together, they came up with some nasty and really cool stuff. The only blemish, I thought, on the effects side of things, so when Brundle is in full bodysuit but no longer wearing clothes, so that's like, there's two distinctions there. Like when he jumps through the gynecologist's office, or like the clinic where she's trying to get the late night appointment and stuff like that. She wants to be seen right away. Brundlefly jumps through the window and takes her because he knows that she's pregnant now. That suit, to me, I made a note about it. He looks like a giant ginger root, just like with the color of it.
Yeah.
And like the way his...
That's the phase I was talking about earlier. That was, I was just a little bit like, it's kind of,
There's something about it. He looks like a Power Rangers villain.
Yeah. Well, he's like an overgrown putty of sorts.
Yeah, it just, that part didn't jive as well as all of the stuff that led up to that, and then definitely the final transformation that comes after. It's just the one where I was like, like he looks kind of weird, but
I did like that scene though. I was not expecting him to just jump through that damn window. That felt like something
out of the hell out of me.
Yeah, it felt like something out of Batman. I was like, oh shit.
But yeah, I mean, that's just a small drop in terms of, that was the one thing about it that I didn't like as much as I like the other ones. It's not even that I didn't like it. It just, compared to the other stuff, it didn't seem to be on the same level. So I'm gonna go first because I think it's just easy for me to do. The 86 Fly absolutely takes. I mean, it won an Oscar for it, so it's definitely gonna be the one that helps to clean sweep 86 Fly for me over the 58 Fly. So that gets the point for me. It gets all 4 of the points. So what about you, Cody?
Unsurprisingly, the same. But one thing, I don't know if any of us mentioned this, but like when he tries to transport the first baboon, and it just winds up this pile of guts.
Yeah.
That was pretty awesome. I mean, that was horrifying.
Yeah,
to me.
It was.
Because I mean,
it was gross.
I hate seeing animals, even if it's fake. You know what I mean? I hate seeing animals go through shit in movies. And then like that, just that quick smack. This is an effects thing. That smack of the bloody hand on the window. I mean, you've seen this in 100 movies, but in this one in particular, I thought it was like it actually made me jump. So
yeah.
But yeah, I'm also a clean sweep 86.
Something about
what about you, Josh?
How in its final form it got even more fucked up. It went from being the perfect amalgamation of Fly and human to this, but also Tetsuo the Iron Man is amazing.
Very good. Yeah.
Needless to say, 86 gets the point for effects. I mean, it's like the poster child of body horror.
And so the final score for you is 3-1 in favor of 86, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did either of you have any intangibles before we wrap it up? Something that might give a bonus point to the 58 side specifically, or just continue to bury the 58 side because 86 is running away with it?
I mean, my intangibles was more so a personal anecdote than anything. I watched both of these films as a kid. I watched the 58 version first, and I fell in love with it. It's the same genre of Universal Horror-esque horror films combined with the best of the nuclear age, because I also grew up with shit like Godzilla. So I loved the first one growing up. I read in a book about just different creatures of film, a lot of Ray Harryhausen and other stuff, and I saw that there was a remake that way. So I watched this one, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's why it's one of those, because I can make a list of like what caused me to be the way I am as far as film goes. It's one of those films that helped influence me. I think that would probably be the one that got me into body horror. So I gave that an extra point for intangibles, the 86 version, because of that, and because of it's one of my favorite movies. So I gave it that little nudge extra. Not that I needed it.
Okay, so what about you, Code? Any intangibles to mention? As I'm looking at mine, I recognize that we kind of brought a lot of them up in talking about the others.
No, I think we covered about everything. This isn't even the one thing I could think of left to say is a little bit metatextual, a little bit personal for me as well. But and I don't think it's anything I could add as a positive or negative to either. But I feel like the Cronenberg's Fly has been such a highly touted film for so long, and I think once in a while not even once in a while, frequently when something has that much acclaim, it can almost kind of ruin a first watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're expecting much more. Then sometimes, at least for me, I have to give it a second try, and then I see what people were seeing in this. That luckily didn't happen this time. On the other side of that, I'd heard almost nothing about the 58 Fly. You know, again, I just thought it was one of those cases where a great remake came from something that had some good ideas but didn't quite execute them all on their own. But in this case, I was, again, very pleasantly surprised by the 58 one. So I just wanted to give it a little bit more props, even though it got its ass handed to it. Like the angriest baboon.
Yeah, this...
You know?
Got its lumpy ass handed to it.
Yeah. But no, I think, honestly, a really solid movie and a great watch. Anybody who listening to this that maybe has just never thought to try it because they thought it'd be a little bit hokey, I say the 58 Fly is definitely worth your time.
They all stopped listening when I brought up B's ass. Or they just tuned in.
That was the hashtag that got them.
I'd like to thank this podcast as well as my co-hosts and friends and family members that all do it with me, because now I can say that the baboon has become my personal mascot.
Mazel tov.
There you go. Yeah. First screen sermon merchandise is the Boon t-shirts.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, I guess with that in mind, we all end up giving the win, so to speak, quote unquote, to the 86 Fly. But I think we're all also in a place where we can say, you should definitely check out the 58 one, if not just to see how it compares to that original one and see how they did that interpretation of that story first, before Cronenberg got his hands on it. So, absolutely watch both movies, but in a pinch, if you can only watch one, I would say watch the 86 one, because you're going to have a little bit more of a superior product at the end. But yeah, I mean, any final words, guys? I think we've covered it very well over the last 2 episodes, and given people a lot to think about in terms of our opinion on it. So anything else before we sign off for the week?
I can't wait to hear any feedback, especially on this part 2.
Mm-hmm. Code, anything from you?
No, I don't think so, man. Just as always, thanks for having me on. Josh, good to finally share the mic with you.
That's right, it was the first time for you two.
Yeah, we've only talked through text before
I didn't even think about that.
Yep. I didn't know Josh had a voice until this podcast started, so...
I recorded one episode where I didn't, so...
That's true.
Didn't talk much. Well, all right, guys. We'll call that a wrap this week. So thanks very much for listening to the Screen Sermon Podcast. We do appreciate it, and we want to engage with you all as much as possible. So find me on Instagram at Screen Sermon. You can find us at YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. And you can also find us via email at screensermonpod@gmail.com. Again, that's screensermonpod@gmail.com. Send us your feedback, your requests, suggestions, anything that you would like to have conversations with us about, or maybe even have like questions and stuff like that. Maybe do a Q&A thing down the road. I could certainly see doing that. So yeah, just let us know. Let us know what you're thinking. Reach out to us and engage more with the show. But as always, thank you, Josh. Thank you, Cody. It was a pleasure. Looking forward to cutting these and editing it and putting it all together and putting them out there for the listeners of the congregation. And I'll chat with you fellas soon.